OpenShift DevOps engineer. So as a OpenShift DevOps engineer, what we will do? Okay, so consider there is an OpenShift cluster. Okay, with the master node and control worker node. So in the cluster, you will have different namespaces. Okay, namespaces or projects. You will have different project. So first namespace is dev, second namespace is SIT, third namespace is UIT. Then finally there will be a prod. It will not be a namespace. Prod will be a different OCP cluster altogether for security reasons. Okay, you will have one more cluster which is the production cluster. So that we have the security isolation between your lower environment cluster and production cluster. Okay, so this is the environment specific. So we have a OpenShift cluster. Under the OpenShift cluster, we created the dev, SIT, UAT, and production. So why we are doing dev, SIT, UAT, and production? So we are the company or wherever you are working, they are creating a Java application. Okay, so they might be a Swiggy or Zomato kind of company where they are having a application like Swiggy, they are developing as a Java. Okay, so this Java application, they write a code, okay, if loop, for loop, whatever it is. They write all the code, they will code it. Okay, once they code it, they will have a Java code. Okay, this Java code can be deployed into dev. Actually, yes, but no, because this OCP only have understand the containers. They will only have understand the underlying runtime is Docker. Okay, so the underlying runtime is Docker. So as a developer, he knows only to write a code. Okay, as a developer, I know Java or I know Python. So as a Python developer, I created an application. Or Java developer, I created an application. Okay. Then how to make this application to dev environment? Locally, I can test Java C, right? Java C and Java name. That is the command to run your Java compiler. So you will get a local compiler in your local environment, which is your laptop. That is fine. But we have to test in our dev environment, which is in the OCP cluster, where so the tester can access it and further test the code and functionality, or everyone can access the no it and access the code. Then once we tested the code in development, it goes to integration testing, where this Java application will also have a database connection like DB. And there is lot of other connections like cache, Kafka. You will have any or other application. All integration testing will happen in SIT. Then UAT is nothing but pre-production testing. Everything will be tested like production. If it is okay, then that application goes to production. So already some application Swiggy is running in production. We don't want to break the production code or production application. That is why we are going to various stage and ensuring whatever we are going to put it in production will going to run properly. It also includes your security. It also includes your code quality and build quality. Okay, but as a developer, only developer able to write the code. So instead of DevOps, we can also say DevSecOps, which includes our security. But anyway, let me come to that. Either DevOps or DevSecOps engineer. What we will do? Okay, so first of all, when he write the code, where he will write the code, where he will write the code, he needs something called source code repository. So in our case, what we are using is GitLab. Okay, so in the GitLab, we are using GitLab. We are creating a microservice or a repo for that particular project. Okay. So say for example, I am creating a repo, hello world. What developer will do? There will be in the repo, there will be a master branch, then develop branch. Okay. So vertically there will be a code. When there is when the code will be developed in develop one, multiple developers are working, then multiple develop branch will be there. Once the branch is done, the code will be merged to the master. Okay. Or branch also we can follow. Okay. So what we are doing now is writing the code in GitLab. Okay. From GitLab, now to do this locally, they will use no Gradle or Maven build. It's all happening in the developer local. But a DevOps engineer, either he can take the branch, one of the branch or master. We have to ask the application team to where to build. So say my application team is telling build on. So we will from the GitLab we will use Jenkins now as a build server. Okay, now my role is okay, there's a new service, okay, which not new service is ready. The service name is Hello World, develop branch is there. That is the requirement. So what I will do, I will go to this branch, okay, create, add something called Jenkins file. Okay, some environment they have centralized some, but there should be a Jenkins file. Add, we will have a Jenkins file adding to this develop branch. What the Jenkins file will have, it will have the stages. Stage 1, build. Stage 2, scan, maybe SAST, static code. Stage 3, test. Okay, stage 4, no, then we have Docker build. Okay, then stage 4, deploy. Okay, so deploy I'm separating out deploy separately now as of now. Okay, so currently my Jenkins file will have the stages, and in these stages for particular build, what it will use libraries, maybe Gradle library. Okay, during the building there will be some dependencies where it will collect the dependencies. This Jenkins need to be integrated with Nexus. Okay, so the dependencies Nexus will also have a artifact repository. We call Nexus artifact repository. Why? Some dependencies will happen in the build. Once the jar file is created using the Gradle, the jar will be stored in Nexus. The jar is the artifact. This Java I have informed, right? A Java file or the final Java artifact, that code which they have written as a code will be built and created one jar file, jar file. That is nothing but your application artifact. So Nexus is nothing but a artifact repository. So again, this scan will come from different tool. For in this case, we can have Sonar Cube. What it will do, it will do scanning. It can be done before building the file also, where if scanning is failing, build also can fail. Okay, it will have the code quality. So what is the code quality? It's a bad code. Any OS dot file is used. Any vulnerabilities in the code. There is some conditions for Java, some rules. It will check on the scanning. Then Docker build. So what I will do as a DevOps engineer, I will have a Docker file. Okay, in the same repo, or I can use centralized Docker file also. In this case, I'm using the centralized Docker file. Okay, I will use centralized Docker file. Docker file centralized. Okay, centralized means for all the application. What the Docker file will have. Okay, now I am created a jar file. Now to deploy in OCP or Kubernetes, I need to make this a container. So jar file will have the base image. So for example, that base image I already scan Alpine image version 1.2. So then the base image, then it will have the name of the service. Okay, so hello world. So this name and all we will make as a variable to pick it in runtime based on the repo. But I'm saying what will be there in the Docker file. And Docker file will also have run command where run this jar whichever we created in the previous build will move to certain location where inside the Docker container. Then you have to have the npm start. So these all kind of commands will be inside the Docker file. So once this stage is completed, scanning stage, Docker build stage will come. Docker build stage, what it will do, it will create one container. It will create not a container, it will create a image. Okay, so it will create a Docker image. How it has created as a DevOps engineer, once a developer completes the coding, I have configured the Jenkins file in that repo, and also I am maintaining the centralized Docker file. This Docker file I am pointing out in the stage Docker build stage, this Docker file, which has which image. So it will take the Alpine image. Inside the Alpine image, it will move the jar file and may create a Docker content. This Alpine image, base image. Once the base images, it will not have any application. Now, since I have added the jar, it will become the hello world image because the name also we have given. Okay, this will become hello, and I have to store this image. Where I will store this image? I will store this image in image registry. Image registry. It's nothing but some kind of storage where we will like have all the versions of the images created. So where the artifact is going in Nexus. Where the image is going in the image registry. Okay, this pipeline I'm configuring for this new service. So next time when developer make a code change in the develop branch, automatically you can come to Jenkins, and in Jenkins it will show the pipeline name. I'm keeping, then there's a button called build. So whenever the developer go and click the build, these stages will be executed where it will build using Gradle, it will scan, it will do the Docker build. Okay, and one if this all is successful, then the image will be created and goes to the registry. And in Red Hat, OpenShift, they have their QA registry, QA image registry, which we can use. Or if you are using AWS, it is ECR, or if you are using Azure, it is Azure Container Registry. Okay. So now follow carefully where we have the in this step, if this build is failing to some reason where Jenkins doesn't have the space to build it, because when Jenkins build, it will do the build here and images will be in the Jenkins server only. We have to delete like not every day, so if space is high, or if build is failing due to some Gradle issues. So those times as a DevOps engineer, if the developer says build is fail, I will go and check the build logs, build console, Jenkins build console logs. Okay, logs, and see what is the issue with the build, and I will fix it. It may be misconfiguration of my Jenkins file. It can be misconfiguration in my Docker file. Docker file cannot run as sudo. Some issues with I will fix it as a DevOps engineer. I will fix it. Okay. Now I will come to the deployment part. What I explained was a build part alone. Okay. Since it looks clumsy, but still we require this. I'm not changing the page. Okay, so now I have my image in the image registry. Okay, so now what I will do, I will create in Jenkins, no, in GitLab, I will create one more repo. Okay, one more repo. That repo is nothing but deployment repo. Okay, in the deployment repo, I will create one file for dev because we have dev here, and one file for SIT since we have SIT, and one file for UAT since we have UAT. In this file, I will create say image. Okay, which image? There's a image. Okay, so then I will give the URL or path of my QA registry. So what will happen in my QA registry? I will have hello world, where this is in my Docker. I have given hello world, and also the repo of hello world v 1.1 created. Similarly, for all the applications, there will be a QA registry link. This link I will copy and put the image in my dev for particular service. Okay, how many service is coming? I will add all the service and the image. Whenever I have update the image, I have also configured deployment uh, Argo CD. Since it's a new application, so once I create with the build pipeline, I go to Argo CD. In Argo CD, I will create an application. So if you go to Argo CD console, you can create an application, or we can use Argo CD CLI. Okay. New application as hello world I will create. And what I will do, this particular deployment file or deployment for in GitLab, I have another, that deployment environment, I will that deployment thing I will give it to Argo CD for my new application. In Argo CD, it will ask me to give the Git link. Okay, it will Argo CD talks directly with Git, not with Jenkins. It will, because Argo CD follows something called GitOps principles. Okay, it is a GitOps principle. We also have an operator in OCP which is called OpenShift GitOps operator, which is nothing but Argo CD only. Okay, so what happens now? My Argo CD will deploy into my dev. If I want to deploy into SIT, then the image for that application need to be updated in the SIT. Then automatically it will deploy to Argo CD application will be deployed to SIT. Okay, so in Argo CD, we have to clearly mention which deployment file this service need to use, dev or SIT or UAT, or production will have its own deployment. So this deployment repository in GitLab is maintained by me as a DevOps engineer. I am maintaining this deployment repository. Okay, so instead of manually updating the image version, I can also add the, since it's in the GitLab, I can add one more Jenkins job. Okay, one more Jenkins job where I can create some UI kind of form where select the environment, because here we are doing build Docker images pushed into registry. I can take the API call from QA registry, and whenever new image is coming, it will show in the Jenkins. I can select it, select the dev SIT UAT, the developer can select. Ideally, when he select, it will update this file in the backend. So I have made an automation. There is a script I have written. That script will update this value whenever they whenever they use the deployment job, so that developer no need to directly have access to my deployment repo. I have configured that in the Jenkins job as a deployment job. You can go and select the version. If build is successful, the version is of the image is pushed to QA registry. From QA registry, I'm automatically populating all the images here, so they can select the image from here and which environment. And behind the screen, it's my deployment YAML, which has been placed in the GitLab. So automatically it will update my deployment YAML, and Argo CD always syncs because it's using GitOps, syncs, and it will deploy to your dev SIT and UAT. And production, we are having completely a different Jenkins, different Git repo, and different QA registry to isolate from my lower environment, where these all will be so what will happen in for production, I will not do the build. Okay, automatically the image is tested in dev, the image is tested in SIT, the image is tested in UAT, is available in my QA registry. So in my production, I will pick the version, stable version already tested, and with that I have create a repo where I created a deployment file for my manifest for my production, and I can directly configure the Argo CD for my production cluster. It's a different OCP cluster to be deployed, because in production we follow the different steps. Okay, this is what as a DevOps engineer I am doing. Other than that, within the OCP. So now what I did, I have developer completed writing the coding. I configure the deployment pipeline, which includes my Jenkins file and Docker file. In the Jenkins file, I put what are the different stages. In Docker file will be called in the Docker build stage, and Docker build is triggering a Docker image, which is pushed to QA registry, and from QA registry we are using a deployment manifest, which is which is config Argo CD, the application we are configuring in, I am configuring in Argo CD, and from Argo CD we are deploying, right? After I deployed my Hello World application, I need to expose it. So how I will expose? I have another YAML file, okay, which is called route.yaml. You can do from OCP console directly, or you can use manifest for everything. The best practice is using manifest, or console is not a best way. The other way of doing is OC expose. So there's a CLI. So I can also use CLI and say OC expose hello world. So this will create the expose via route so that I can able to access my application which I have deployed. Now what developer will do? Developer just wrote the code. Now yes, once I exposed with route, developer will get hello world com as a route. So you will click this link, you will see the application. If it's a you will see the application. What rest of the things are taken care by DevOps engineer only. And route is one simple thing I have mentioned here. There is another thing called observability, setting up the Grafana. OpenShift by default have the observability space, which is with used as a Kibana stack, or it all already have. But on top of it, every time we should not we no one need to access the OCP, so we built our own observability called Grafana. We have different operators also. So many activities I'm doing as a OpenShift DevSecOps engineer, where developer is only involved in writing the code. There is operation part of maintaining this worker node and master node, the cluster itself, where any worker node goes down or CPU memory, which I'm not including. That is part of the infrastructure engineer who or cloud engineer who will manage that. But as a DevSecOps engineer, I the cluster is ready for me. I am setting up all these different steps. Okay. To brief it in short, again, let me go here. I will first tell, okay, developer have a Git repo for his application and he has a branch. Okay, it can be master branch, it can be develop branch, but you need to have a branch. So now what happens? So this is the developer task. Okay, developer task. Now, as a DevOps engineer, what I'm doing, this guy is telling, this developer is telling, I have created a new application. Now I have to deploy. So what I will do, I will first go and ask him for which branch or which repo you want to configure. I will ask him. He will give me the repo link, or he will tell this particular repo. In that repo, I will create a Jenkins file. And also I will check if Gradle file is available. If not, I will add the Gradle file also, which is nothing but a build file. Okay, there should be a file called build.gradle. There should be a file called pom.xml, but that I leave it to application. Build.gradle is required. Then Docker file. Okay. So then what I am doing, this all for build. Okay, to build the jar and then to build the Docker image. Then what I'm doing now, I'm doing to have the deployment. For deployment, there is another Git repo which is maintained by me as a DevOps engineer, which is the deployment repo. So what I have in the deployment repo, I have the templates or manifest dev.yaml, sit.yaml, uat.yaml. I will in production I will have a separate prod.yaml. Just I'm adding for your reference. So what this who is configured? So now this dev.yaml, how it knows there's a new application coming? Now as a DevOps engineer, I have to go and add the new application in this dev.yaml. So what I have to add? Basically the application name, and actually what I will do, I will in one dev.yaml file I cannot add all the images. So actually what I will have a value dot service. Okay, in Kubernetes, there is something called config maps, and secrets. Okay, so what is config maps? Those are values. So in this dev.yaml, say I have an application hello one. These are microservices. Okay, hello two, hello three, hello four. Okay, now if I write the application name as hello one here, then in dev.yaml again allow 2 I have to create the dev.yaml again with allow 2. I have to create again with allow 3. Again, instead of that, what I am doing value.service. So when I run this file, it will pick from the config map. Okay. So each service will have a config map, or we can have one config map, but it differs. So this config map value, it will pick up in my runtime, in my Jenkins, or in my Argo CD, I will have a config map configured. Okay. If I have a password, say I have a database username. So what I will do, I will do value dot secret. Where it will come from? It will come from my secrets. So both are values only. So we are maintaining one dev.yaml for 4 applications. But whenever I am deploying hello one, I will pass hello1 to here, and whatever required for this is coming from my config map. Say I have Nginx properties, application. There is, if you're application developer, or there's something called application.properties, where the properties is required for the application to run. Those properties will be, say, environment variable. This need to be there in the application. All this will be in the config map only. Okay, so that is why I am configuring config map and secrets. Okay, so for the deployment. So now what I'm doing, so when the image in this process, once the image is created, the image will be stored where? In the image registry. Okay, what will have? It will have the version number, latest version. Every time the new image create, image name will not change. We call it as image tag. You can say image version or image tag. Okay, so now this image, where it is pointed, it is pointed to dev.yaml. Okay, so now what I am doing, every time when there's a new image created, I have to go to my deployment repo, git repo, and I have to change in the dev.yaml file, right? To do that manually, what I'm doing, I am creating the deployment deployment job. Okay, in my Jenkins, I am creating a deployment job for developer to easily, next time he can go and deploy. If any issues, he can let me know. What I'm doing in the deployment job, I'm creating a job name, which is nothing but the application itself. So everywhere we have to keep the application name for the uniqueness. Okay. So we will have one kind of, when you trigger the job, okay, there is some issue with my pen, but when you trigger the job, okay, when you trigger the job, automatically what will happen? Let me do. So when you trigger the job, automatically what will happen? It will show for the which environment you want to deploy, dev or SIT. These options I have given, and which image. So you have to choose the image, then the deployment will be completed. All this who is doing as a DevOps engineer, as an OpenShift DevOps engineer, I'm doing all these steps for new application, and going forward, developer will trigger the deployment job in Jenkins. If any issues, who will look into it? As a DevOps engineer, I have to look into it. Hope you understood what the OpenShift DevOps engineer will do as part of DevOps. The security part I am skipping now, because in the Jenkins file only there's a stage for SonarQube, Fortify, Prisma, the tools, so that the scanning will happen. That will go to the different tool. If we are using something called the Prisma Cloud, that is for container scanning. So, Prisma or 40. Fortify, Prisma scanning. There's different tools are there. So that I'm skipping for now, okay, because we are focusing more on DevOps, but DevSecOps, this also will be part of your Jenkins file. Then once your image is created, what you have to configure in that is there is something called runtime scanning, runtime image scanning in your OCP image scanning, which is you have to configure using something called advanced Red Hat Advanced Cluster Security. There's an operator to scan the images. So there is these. I'm not going to add too much into this, but hope as a DevOps engineer, you have a lot of responsibility. Developer will just develop the code, but to develop dev environment, SIT environment, UAT environment, and finally the application will run in your production environment without any issues. And also as a DevOps engineer, you have all the responsibility of performance, no scalability, availability. You will set pod replicas. Okay, these replicas, how many pods should run, or HPA, horizontal pod auto scaling, these all will be in your YAML file, dev.yaml. Okay, which will contain your deployment file will contain how many replicas, HPA, metrics, everything. There's a lot of things in your deployment manifest. Based on that, Argo CD will be picked. Yes, I forgot to mention one more step. Once you done with this dev site and all, you have to create an application in Argo CD. You have to go to Argo CD and create application with the application name with the branch, whatever branch you have used for your build. Same you have to point to Argo CD. Then Argo CD will already configured. It will be running in your cluster. It's already configured. You need to just create the application with this branch and not with this branch, which actually with our deployment branch. And whenever we add a new application, automatically when you add the config map with the values from the config map, these values will be picked and it will run. Okay, this is in very short. I am trying to tell you what is the roles and responsibility of the DevOps engineer in OpenShift or Kubernetes. Okay, thank you guys.